Thanks for joining us. Before we hit you with another fabulous episode, we need a favor. Make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform. Like and follow us on social media. And above all, tell all your friends, how cool we are. You rock. Now, let's do this.
Oh, yeah!
Welcome to What's Your Mount Rushmore podcast with hosts Mark Duval and John Hanson.
Are you kidding me?
Two old friends and knuckleheads discussing and covering their top 4 choices for any and all topics, making up their Mount Rushmore selections each week. Nothing is off limits. As you listen, remember, we always want to know, what's your Mount Rushmore?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again. Happy New Year.
Merry New Year!
Woohoo! I mean, we're releasing this on New Year's Eve, but hey, you might be listening to it in 2025 in the future. Happy New Year to everybody listening. And this is kind of a cool episode that we're doing. It's timely like some of the episodes we've done in the past, but it also gives us a chance to sort of thank all of our listeners. It was a cool year. We had a great run doing this. We're all done. We're finished now. Oh, no, we're not. That's right. No. Sorry to disappoint anybody. We're going to keep going into the new year for sure. But yeah, 40 some episodes, closing in on 50 episodes now. And it was a hell of a run. So looking forward to
it won't be long before we will have been doing this already 1 year. I mean, because we do release one a week. And it really is. Like we've had so much fun doing this. And again, there is zero intention to stop as we move forward into 2025. And I think it's just going to get bigger and better. And we'll continue to book a variety of guests with different topics. And I love all the people who participate, whether it's on social media or even just privately. I get a lot of texts from a lot of our friends with show ideas, with critiques. They are very thankful that we're no longer on film.
Yes.
And that you just get to listen. And I think that is what makes us a little different from a lot of other podcasts, is we do use a lot of clips, whether it's from a TV show, a movie, a song, sound effects. And I know a lot of podcasts don't. They just talk.
Yeah. And
those, when I have tried those, they give me heavy eyes, unless I'm really into the topic that they're talking about. But yeah. The one thing, too, and you and I have talked a lot, whether it's obviously on the podcast or privately, that this whole What's Your Mount Rushmore concept, which we're now wrapping up our first year, give or take, and going into a new year, it's become so obvious that this is such an appropriate podcast listen for those who are Gen X.
Sure.
Because, again, we've talked about it before on the podcast, but man, just to kind of look back now, and as we wrap up 2024, so many of our topics and so much of what we discuss, debate, make fun of, it's all stuff a Gen X, generation or would have experienced or would have watched, listened to, saw.
Well, and this episode is no different either, because I'm just looking at my list, and even my honorable mention that I have or two, every one of them is going to be something that a Gen X person would appreciate, and somebody
Likewise.
who's somebody who's a little bit older than the Gen X can appreciate it as well. But I think a younger person may not be familiar with some of these topics and some of these picks that we're making. And like I said, in this episode, they fall, and it isn't intentional. I'm not intentionally doing it as a Gen X thing. It's just what I know and what I love.
It's who we are.
It's who we are.
We run to it. We don't run from it.
We embrace it. Well,
but this week,
I love it.
And again, so timely. I mean, we're following up our Christmas songs episode, which was very appropriate because we released it the week before Christmas. And now we're releasing one that's very tied to what the day that we're releasing this is all about. And it's New Year's.
Yeah.
And that part of the holiday season. And we wanted to do something tied to New Year's. So we came up with this, and it should be a fun one to hit here. And it's basically New Year's scenes, whether that be from film or TV, just memorable scenes that tie to New Year's. It was pretty easy for me to come up with a few right away.
Yeah.
And then I did have to give this a little, tougher thought about it.
Me too.
And really try to focus. So
yeah, I did too. I had one or two that came to mind, and after that, I kind of started scratching my head. But after some Googling, I found a bunch that, I remember that. That was tied to New Year's, or it had to do with New Year's in some way, and was easy to make a list then.
And just for the record, because I believe we skipped this, that is John Hanson, and I am Mark Duvel. We are the hosts of What's Your Mount Rushmore?
Who the hell cares?
So here we go. New Year's, you ready?
Yes. The ball's about to drop.
Well, I got two that dropped this morning. I'm going to kick it off with, I'm not going to go in any specific order, but I'm just going to go in kind of the order that they came to mind. Maybe that makes sense. So when I think of a New Year's scene, one of the first ones that came to my mind was from the 1989 movie When Harry Met Sally. This is a side note on this. I really would probably consider this one of the all-time top romantic comedy movies of all time. It's one I've seen numerous times. Again, I'm weird that way. I do rewatch things an awful lot, and this falls into that category as a romantic comedy. I mean, and that's not the easiest thing for a dude to really get behind and embrace. But this partially it's because it's so well cast. I mean, Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, they're both very like iconic, actors, and they've been around a hell of a long time. It's cool because it's the end and the climax of the whole buildup, what the entire damn movie is about. And again, I got to assume most people have seen this movie around our age. But Harry and Sally did not really know each other. They had a mutual friend and then drove from Chicago to New York after they graduated college, like did a little ride share together, and obviously spent some time in a car, got to know each other a little bit. But then the cool part of the movie is for like 12 years, them living in New York City, they cross paths numerous times. They become friends. Then they don't. They didn't like each other. Then they do like each other. Then they, get romantic with each other and have a little hot and heavy action in the sheets one night.
That wasn't very funny.
And then that turns bad. But then it all ends with them realizing that they are meant to be together. They're kind of soulmates. They're supposed to be together, and that all becomes realized on, you guessed it, New Year's Eve.
I'm sorry, Harry. I know it's New Year's Eve. I know you're feeling lonely, but you just can't show up here, tell me you love me, and expect that to make everything all right. It doesn't work this way.
Well, how does it work?
I don't know, but not this way.
How about this way? I love that you get cold when it's 71 degrees out. I love that it takes you an hour and a half to order a sandwich. I love that you get a little crinkle above your nose when you're looking at me like I'm nuts. I love that after I spend a day with you, I can still smell your perfume on my clothes. And I love that you are the last person I want to talk to before I go to sleep at night. I
actually thought of this one too pretty quickly after this topic came up. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with something too, because as a Gen X guy, I'm not really big on rom-coms. They're not really my go-to. But this is one of the few that I do like, and one of the few that I've watched, multiple times over the years, because it is good. And part of that, let's be honest, it's Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal is a favorite of mine.
Mine too. It's hard to not like really anything he does.
Yeah,
and I'm certainly not a hater of Meg Ryan. I mean, she's done her share of legitimate box office, blockbusters, and
yeah.
But you're right, and you said it too. Like, yes, this is a rom-com, and that's not per se our preferred genre. It's not like when you go on Netflix, you're going right to the rom-com section, going, "What am I watching tonight?" But this movie, it's not just a good rom-com; it's just a damn good movie.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's a good story.
It's unique and it's really well done. And again, those two, it's mostly about those two.
Oh, and directed by Rob Reiner, right?
Yeah.
He was, kind of found his own in the directing world there in the 80s. And this is definitely one of his peaks, I think, in his directing.
Yeah.
career.
And obviously it has, it's not the specific New Year's Eve scene, which is what our topic today is about, but it definitely has one of the most memorable scenes in a movie. And that's the fake orgasm at a restaurant scene.
Yeah.
I mean, you will, if you watch that movie, you will never forget that scene. And that right there shows you how good it's pretty damn she sold it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And at the end of the scene with the old ladies, makes the comment, "I'll have what she's having." Of course, a lot of people don't realize this, but that old lady, the actress, was Rob Reiner's mom.
Yeah, exactly. I did hear that at some point.
Oh, God. Oh.
I'll have what she's having.
I like it. That was a good pick. It didn't make my list. I did think about it. It didn't make my list, probably because I just kind of didn't really feel like putting a rom-com on there. But if you're going to do if I'm going to put a rom-com movie on any list, the New Year's episode would probably be the one to do it because it just fits so well.
Yeah, and I was determined to show a softer side of me instead of being always this prick on the mic.
You definitely have a soft side.
It's both, all sides.
It's
all four sides of me are soft at the moment.
You're kind of soft in the middle, as they say. But yeah, well, that's fine. Good pick. So here's kind of an interesting thing about my list, and I did not even realize this until we were just about to start recording. I have two of my picks that took place. One of them is a movie, and one's a TV show. They both came out in 1997. So there's a tie there. But then I have a separate tie between two of my picks where they both take place because it's a fictional New Year's. They take place on the exact same New Year's Eve. So interesting little tie that I'll get to. The first one is interesting. The first one is from 1997, and I have a pick coming up later from 1997 as well. This is actually a TV series. It's the Seinfeld episode they titled The Millennium episode. And
Y2K.
And this did, as I mentioned, it came out in 1997, which was their 8th season. It was towards the end of their 8th season, a full 2.5 years before Y2K, before the actual end of the millennium. But the whole point of this episode is that Kramer and Newman are each planning rival millennium parties, and they're planning these parties for December 31st, 1999, when we're about to change over to the year 2000. And, since it was going to be the party of the century, both these guys decided they had to plan their parties almost 3 years in advance. And during the episode, and of course, that's a very Kramer.
So stupid.
A very Kramer and Newman thing to do, to be planning a New Year's party 3 years in advance.
Hello, Newman.
So they keep battling over who's going to come to their parties. Well, who's going to invite Jerry? Is Elaine going to be here? It's part of the episode is all this going on. Jerry ends up poking a big hole in Newman's plans because he says that Newman apparently booked this fancy hotel venue for his party. It's going to be this big fancy venue he's going to spend all this money on. And Jerry said, but you told them that you wanted to book it for the millennium. And Newman says, yeah, that's right. And he says, well, the millennium technically would be December 31st, 2000, because there's no year zero. So
whoops.
So that kind of poked a big hole into that thing. But
Well, I just got your invitation to the Newmanian party.
You just got it? Damn, the mail is slow.
You knew I was having a millennium party, but you just had to throw yours on the same day.
I have done nothing unethical.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to cancel it because I've told everybody about my party.
Cancel? Think again, Longshanks. I started planning this in 1978. I put a deposit down on that revolving restaurant that overlooks Times Square, and I booked Christopher Cross.
But it was just a fun episode. And the cool thing about Seinfeld episodes, there's always other things going on in every episode, and there's different plot lines. And you think to yourself, oh, that's right. That same thing happened in this episode. This is the episode where George was trying to get fired from the Yankees. Do you remember that? And
I do remember that. I guess I wouldn't have remembered that it's this episode.
No.
I definitely remember him trying to get fired from the Yankees, though.
Yeah, because the Mets had offered him a better job, but they wouldn't hire him unless he got fired from the Yankees because they didn't want to steal somebody from their crosstown rival. So George goes through this whole series of things to try to get fired. He takes Babe Ruth's jersey out of a trophy case and he's wearing it to lunch and he's spilling spaghetti sauce all over his Babe Ruth's jersey. And George Steinbrenner is like, yeah, out with the old, in with the new, get rid of that old crap. So he can't get fired. He like streaks during a Yankees game across the field. I think what actually ultimately does get him in trouble was he takes a World Series trophy, ties it to the back of his car, and just does donuts around the parking lot, dragging the World Series trophy behind
I do remember
car.
that scene too.
Anyway,
I missed that show.
Yeah, it was a good show. So he, and of course, as things go with George, he never actually does get fired. Things kind of go bad for him, and he ends up getting stuck in the same old crappy job that he hated. But I just thought that was a neat tie-in because it's the same episode as the Millennium and Kramer and Newman trying to fight over the New Year's Eve party. So that one stood out to me when I thought of New Year's Eve scenes. Again, it's a TV series, TV show. I have another TV show coming up later in my picks, but It fits. So I'm throwing it up there, putting it up on the mountain.
That makes me think of, it might be one of the most like overblown media things maybe ever.
Y2K?
Is the whole fear of Y2K and computers aren't going to be able to continue because they're not designed to have that date in them and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And
people were
there
scared.
were people that really were kind of nervous that, the whole grid is going to shut down. And then what?
Yeah, yeah. I remember thinking that. At midnight, you're kind of looking around. You know, those are sort of early days of cell phones. You look, is my cell phone just going to shut off? Are the lights all going to go out? And
do you happen to remember what you did that New Year? I know you and I have been together on several New Year's Eves over the years.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you did that specific one?
I do. I'm pretty sure about this. I'm not 100% sure if it was this year, but I think it was. It was at a bar with a bunch of friends. A blast from the past. This bar, I'm pretty sure, doesn't exist anymore. Maybe you can confirm whether or not it does. The Mermaid. Do you remember that? Do you know if that's
in
still
Mounds
there?
View, the
in
bowling
Mounds
alley
View.
and nightclub.
Yeah, yep. They had a bar, nightclub, bowling alley, restaurant, a whole shebang right there.
I want to say it's Toast, but I probably could be wrong. I really don't know.
I think it might be gone. I think I drove by it in the last couple of years while we were up there in one of the times you're visiting.
I think you're right.
Any listeners that might know, chime in, leave a comment, tell us if it's still there. But yeah, I think that's what I was doing. Do you remember what you were doing on the?
I was. That was one. If you remember these, and I know you will, obviously, but they were big organized parties at International Market Square. They were called Putting on the Glitz.
Yeah.
And we, because of our radio days, we actually used to work with the guy who produced these parties. His name was Dino. He was a character, but this was that big one. So it was a bunch of my high school buddies and my now wife. She was certainly a part of this. We took a limo to International Market Square, and it's just a big party in a really cool old warehouse building. It was really cool, but yeah, I remember when the midnight the ball was coming. You're like, oh my God, is this building going to lock on us?
Yeah.
Or like all the lights going to go out?
That's what we thought.
And then nothing happened. And what did end up happening was we ended up drinking an awful lot of alcohol and took advantage of that limo ride home.
So it was like any other Saturday night pretty much for you. But yeah, no, I went to New Year's Eve parties there, a couple of them, but I did not go that. I'm almost positive that I was not there for the millennium.
Putting on the glitz.
Yeah, they were fun though. Fun parties.
I'm going to jump into my next one then. And my next one is going to be a really fun movie from 1983. And it really is one of my just favorite comedies of the 80s. And I got to be honest, I don't remember if this made my comedy list or not, but it could have been and possibly should have been. It's Trading Places.
Yeah.
You know,
when you said 1983, I thought that's also on my list.
Is it? So this one is, so you're clearly thinking of New Year's Eve on the Amtrak train ride.
Yeah. At the end of the movie. Yeah. The culmination of the movie.
And the whole build up too. It's just the fun part of that movie where Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd are clearly the two big stars of this movie. They carry it, and boy, do they carry it.
Looking good, Billy Ray!
Feeling good, Louis.
But it's how they're in these different characters. You know, Eddie Murphy is this exchange student from Cameroon.
Yes.
And they're basically just trying to steal a briefcase and swap out the data of like a orange, if I remember, like frozen oranges.
Yeah, the futures.
And like the forecast.
The orange juice futures, yeah, forecast.
Yeah.
From Beaks.
From Beaks, who was played by Paul Gleason, the principal from Breakfast Club, who talk about that guy being like a Mount Rushmore, never a leading role, but my God, is he in some of the most memorable movies, like Breakfast Club, like this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and he has such there's a line in this movie where he's already like busted their little disguises, and they're in their little train car. And of all people too, especially here from Minnesota, Al Franken, who formerly was, a Saturday Night Live cast member.
Yep.
Him and the other dude who are like the baggage handlers for Amtrak.
Yeah.
They're drunk and they bust into the room, and it's after Beaks has already pulled a gun on these guys. That's the line that he says.
I'll rip out your eyes and piss on your brain.
But that is one of the funniest lines that dude has ever delivered.
Yeah.
And he has a ton of them also in Breakfast Club.
Of course.
But I love the whole scene, that whole train scene. There's like bits and pieces that are hilarious. You know, it's Eddie Murphy, like he keeps swatting away flies. With that little feather duster thing, and he's in an Amtrak train. That doesn't make sense.
Merry New Year! Happy New Year. In this country, we say Happy New Year. Ha 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 ha! Thank you for correcting my English, which stinks. I am Nanja Ibuko, exchange student from Cameroon. Ha 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 ha!
Random.
And then what would certainly be controversial now, Dan Aykroyd comes in and he's in blackface.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's dressed as some Jamaican reggae guy.
Yeah.
And it's so badly done. But I think that's the point.
Yeah.
You know, and those two act like they knew each other and they met each other at some weird soiree. And then Jamie Lee Curtis, who back then was very young and definitely was hot to trot.
Sure.
You know, and she's this girl from Sweden, even though she's not dressed appropriately. And then the other guy calls her out on it.
Yeah. Because she's wearing like lederhosen, German. And actually, I read that the character was supposed to be a German character, but she couldn't master a German accent. So they just decided to write that whole thing in where they bust her on not, because
just looking unprepared.
Yeah. So she could do a Swedish accent, but she couldn't do a German accent, as an actor. I mean,
wow.
Actual Jamie Lee Curtis couldn't. So
it's just a series of events on New Year's Eve on an Amtrak train in the movie Trading Places. It was wild. Definitely one of those that immediately came to my brain.
And the thing about that movie is it takes place basically throughout the winter, because it starts around Thanksgiving, it goes through Christmas. There's a famous scene with Dan Aykroyd, as a drunken Santa, whatever, and all that.
A whole salmon, filleted salmon in his Santa suit.
So disgusting.
Gross.
So rude.
And the funny thing is that movie takes place basically throughout the holiday season, but it was a summer blockbuster. It came out in the summer, so I always found that kind of interesting, because it could have been a movie they could have released around the holidays because it has all those scenes that would have tied in. But
is that a fact? I guess I did not know that in 1983 that was released in the summer. Because now that you say that makes zero sense.
It does make zero sense. But it was a summer. A lot of blockbusters are released in the summer, and they had high hopes. The studio had high hopes that this would be a massive movie, and they were right. It was a massive movie.
But you would think, because another huge release for movies is Christmas.
Yeah. A couple other weird facts about that movie. That movie was originally written and conceived for Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. They were supposed to be the two in that movie.
And as much as I love Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, that would have been just as good, I bet.
It probably would have been pretty good. It probably would have been good, because those two guys, they were coming off of a couple of big hits. They did Stir Crazy, and they had a good run together. But the reason why they didn't do it, because very shortly before they started production, is when Richard Pryor actually lit his hair on fire while he was freebasing. So, and that's a fact.
Hey, it's supposed to be a party.
So he was unavailable to make that movie, and luckily, up and coming, Eddie Murphy stepped in. Just his second movie, stepped in, and it obviously pretty much launched his career, because he was in 48 Hours before that, but Trading Places was a much bigger movie, bigger blockbuster, bigger budget. Everything about it was a bigger movie. So this is really the movie that put him on the map. And then I had a couple other weird things about Jamie Lee Curtis. So she was known as a horror movie queen at that point in time. She had done the couple Halloween movies. She'd done Prom Night, some other cheesy horror movies, but she hated that. She wanted to be a mainstream actress. And she was paid $1 million to be in the movie Halloween 2, because they wanted her back for that sequel, which was just like a year or two earlier than Trading Places. But she was so desperate to break away from that, she agreed to do Trading Places for just $70,000. So she went from making $1 million like a year earlier to $70,000 for Trading Places. That's how, and it worked, because it totally changed and she says that this movie and the director John Landis, she has to thank for what became her career of doing more comedies and that kind of thing. She totally transformed herself.
Well, she transformed herself, and she also undressed herself because it was the first time we all saw those boobies.
Yes.
Which was in Trading Places, and it's again one of those reasons you like this movie as a kid. There's two scenes that are pretty memorable in that department in Trading Places, and she is one of them.
Yeah, no, she was attractive. She's an attractive lady, no doubt about it.
And that was like really close. That's why I'm surprised. And again, my memory isn't serving me at the moment. But I know I picked the movie Bachelor Party on my 80s comedies because it was my first time seeing film boobies. And I know this would have been right after it. Okay, so you have Trading Places. I had Trading Places. So we both have 2 picks on the board, huh?
Yeah, back up to you for number 3.
Wow. All right, well, I'm going to change moods for 1 second with this pick just because of the serious nature of it and because of the movie that it is. And it's in my opinion, it is the greatest of all time. It's the GOAT of movie sequels. And I'm talking about Godfather 2, Part 2. And this came out in 1974. And the scene that I'm talking about, man, is such a powerful scene, is when Michael Corleone, at a New Year's Eve celebration, calls out his brother Fredo and grabs him after they embrace to like welcome in the new year. And it's when Michael reveals to Fredo that he knows it was him that set him up to be killed.
Yeah.
And it is such a turning point in that family.
Yeah.
And the plot line.
Mike, you don't come to Las Vegas and talk to a man like Mo Green like that.
Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
I can't say enough. I could ramble on for 45 minutes just talking about Godfather, the trilogy, but even specifically Godfather 2. But I know we're zeroing in on the New Year's Eve elements, or at least we're trying, as it relates to our picks.
Yep.
But I stand by that. And I think Godfather Part 2 is the best sequel that's ever been made off an original.
Jot that down. We should do a Mount Rushmore of sequels. I think maybe we have that on our long list. We have a very long list of topics that we may get to or will get to eventually, but I agree.
Funny you say that, because when I came up with this pick, I did go to our little Google list that you and I share our ideas on.
Yeah.
And I did write movie sequels because I'm like, this has to be a topic.
It might be on there already, but yeah, no, it has to be. And you're right. I love that. Great sequel. And this would be an honorable mention for me. Did not make my list, but it's a memorable scene and it's a pivotal scene. Like you mentioned, it's pivotal in the movie, obviously. It's pivotal in the family, but it's also pivotal for the entire franchise. That's how big that scene is.
Yeah.
That franchise, it's a turning point, with everything that happened in the whole Godfather saga.
Well, think about it. It's the very moment that ignites the then what will happen, where Michael then orders a hit on his own brother.
Yeah.
There's a plane waiting for us to take us to Miami in an hour. All right. Don't make a big thing about it. I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart.
And holy
spoiler
shit.
Alert.
Oh, if you haven't seen, yeah. And I know there's going to be a couple people, she'll know who I'm talking about, Angie, that if you haven't seen the Godfather trilogy, I almost would want to tell you, please turn off our podcast right now. And yes, the Godfather movies are long, but just go get some popcorn and dive in, because we're talking about like cinema gold here. I mean, this is as good as it gets, the Godfather trilogy.
Yep.
And that sequel.
Yeah. Great sequel from a great trilogy and a great scene. I love it. Like I said, it was on my list. I think I've got 2 honorable mentions, and that was one of them.
Poor Fredo.
Well, that's the other thing too. Imagine imagine that night, the way Fredo starts that night versus the way Fredo ends that night. I mean, he knows he knows that the writing's on the wall.
He ends up getting killed by his own brother, not because he's evil or malicious. It's just because he's kind of stupid.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He just didn't know he really didn't know the gravity of what he was doing. But it is, man. What a powerful, scene in cinema history. And that is it. That's certainly one of them.
Fredo, the guy that played Fredo, was John Cazale. I can't remember. I always forget how to pronounce his name.
I think that's how you say it. Yeah.
But that dude was one hell of an actor. I mean, he was a phenomenal actor, and he was in some of the best movies of that era. Obviously, the Godfather movies, Dog Day Afternoon.
Brilliant movie.
He was in The Deer Hunter.
Brilliant movie. Yeah, I mean, these are classics.
And sadly, he died very young. He died in the 70s. He was basically on the doorstep of having a monster career, and died. I think he might have been only in 40-ish years old when he died.
He left his stamp, and he had a monstrous career. It just was short.
It was just short.
He really was involved in some of the best movies from that era.
He just was a great actor. So, I mean, off topic a little bit, but just wanted to point that out because he's, memorable.
What do you got to follow Godfather Part 2?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna because of the nature of you talking about this being a bit of a darker turn
the topic of a brother killing another brother. Happy New Year!
Yeah, a little different from When Harry Met Sally, I guess. So I'll throw my darker movie up there as well. This is Boogie Nights, and I mentioned this from at the top. This is the other movie scene, whatever you want to talk about it, from 1997, came out the same year as that Seinfeld episode. So this is actually a really good movie. I would not consider it one of my all-time favorite movies, but it is definitely a very good movie and worth watching on multiple occasions. Most people know the bit about this movie. It was actually Mark Wahlberg's breakout movie. Before this, he was just Marky Mark from the Funky Bunch. And after this, he became Mark Wahlberg, the actor.
Are you sure that's a fact? Because he had done a lot of movies up to this, hasn't he?
I think he had done a couple of things, but he was never a star. I don't think he starred in like an actual movie where he actually did.
Oh, yeah, acting. You're there. Okay, because Basketball Diaries he was still pretty young. So, with Leo and definitely another controversial, very dark movie, but they were both very good in it.
Boogie Nights is, I think, the first movie that he carried, and.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
I mean, it was an ensemble cast in that movie, but he was definitely the main guy. And
Dirk Diggler.
And he had to do some legit acting. Dirk Diggler.
Dirk Diggler with his big peepee.
Hey now.
Do you like my car, Dirk?
What?
I mean,
yeah.
Because I wanted to, I wanted to make sure you thought it was cool, or else I was going to take it back.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's great, Scotty.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Scotty.
I love you. I really love you.
I love you too, Scotty.
Okay.
Let's go back inside, okay?
All right. All right.
So anyway, just to touch. So why is this on my New Year's list? People might be asking. Even people that have seen this movie but haven't seen it in a while might be forgetting this. So obviously, this movie was a fictional look at the porn movie industry in the 1970s, and why it's so memorable as a New Year's movie and scene in particular. There's a party that takes place in this movie on December. In the movie, it takes place on December 31st, 1979. So it's the last day of the 70s. Ironically, remember that date, December 31st, 1979, because that exact date is going to pop up in my last pick. But anyway, so at this party, William H. Macy, the actor, he plays a guy, and by the way, he was one of my all-time favorites in the show Shameless. If anyone has not seen the show Shameless, that show is absolutely hilarious, and William H. Macy is awesome in that show.
He's damn good in that.
Very different part, though, in Boogie Nights. He plays a kind of a soft-spoken, meek little assistant director that works in the industry. They call him Little Bill, and he's the kind of guy that is always taken advantage of. He just always is, and that is especially true when it comes to his wife, because she's always cheating on him. And not only
very openly
not only does she cheat on him, she does it in public with people watching. It becomes kind of a thing with him, and he just always has to learn about this the hard way by seeing her cheating on him. It happened at this New Year's Eve party on December 31st, 1979, and this time he's like, I've had enough. He took a gun, he went into the room, he killed his wife, killed the guy that she was with, and then killed himself.
I know. I as soon as you said the movie, I knew where you were going with this, because that's not like a fun, uplifting New Year's Eve party celebration.
No.
It ends with that.
No, absolutely. It's not. And that's the thing about my list. It's not, and I guess in a sense, The Godfather, it's not necessarily uplifting because it ends with a brother killing a brother, So these lists are meant to be memorable, We're not
Well,
saying these lists are meant to make everybody go on happy, happy, joy, joy. They're just scenes that stood out. And this scene, and the thing about what makes this, it's a memorable scene because of what it is. But it also, if you remember this movie, and I don't know if you've seen it recently or not, but that movie is almost like two movies in one. The first half of the movie, literally up until this scene, is the 1970s. And it's all, it's all fun, love, parties, and everybody's having a great time.
Yeah.
But as it turns to the 1980s, all the characters in this movie start to run into problems. They have issues with drugs. They have problems that
they get off the rails
with money, and they end up problems with the law. I mean, and it literally takes a turn as the 70s turn to the 80s because the whole industry shifts, and all the characters, everything they were doing that was the fun part of their life has changed, and it becomes a darker movie.
It's pretty obvious that the writer, director, the creator of the movie Boogie Nights, that's the intention. It was to showcase the dark nature of that industry.
Yeah.
Back then. And yeah, there was the fun party, always a party, but then it got real and it got dark, and you're right. And that is about as dark as it gets during that movie, because in a weird way, you feel for this guy, that character, Little Bill.
Yeah. It's almost done in a way that you feel bad for him, but it's almost done in a way where he's such a loser that it's almost funny in a sense. It's almost like funny that it's happening. It starts funny. And that's why when he's finally had enough, it ain't funny anymore. And the whole movie takes a turn after that moment. It's very interesting. And it was done obviously very intentionally, because the second half of that movie, from that moment on, it's almost like a different movie. And
you're right, though, for what that movie is and what it's about and the whole kind of baseline of it, that is a really good movie.
Yeah.
It is. I've seen it a couple different times. Wahlberg's great in it.
Yep.
That was Heather Graham's breakout role as a roller girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Burt Reynolds was in it.
She certainly, Burt. Wow. Okay. But yeah, so we both got brothers killing each other and lovers and spouses killing each other.
Double murder, suicide, I guess. Yeah.
So, all right.
My last one will be way, way lighter.
My last one is definitely much lighter too, so I'll get into it right here. And this is my only one that is not tied to a movie. It's tied to a sitcom, and one of my favorite sitcoms, which was the American version of The Office. And the episode that I'm talking about is it's from season 7, episode 13 to be specific, and it's called the Ultimatum episode. And it doesn't take place on New Year's Eve, but it takes place right after. So it's like the first couple days of January. And there's so many little stories that make this episode stand out to me that are hilarious. And I'll go through a few of them. One, the episode kind of starts and kicks off by Jim going into the office because he forgot his phone, and it's after hours, and Dwight Schrute is there. But Schrute is there with a bunch of other dudes dressed in black, wearing red stocking hats, and they're called the Knights of the Night. And their whole point is they meet because they're trying to catch the Scranton Strangler.
That's right, the Scranton Strangler.
So Jim walked into an absolute just goodie bag of things to have more on with Dwight.
Yeah.
Which is the whole dynamic of their relationship.
Yeah.
Another thing is Pam comes up with this giant board for all the employees of the office to write on an index card and slap it on this big board of what their New Year's resolution is. And some of them are hilarious, and some of them are so absurd. Like, to give you an example, Dwight's New Year's resolution is to find a loose woman. And as soon as he says that, Andy now wants that idea instead of learning how to cook meals for one.
Cook meals for one.
Go! And then, Kevin, he's the big dopey guy. His was to eat more vegetables. And one of the reasons I thought of this scene is because of Kevin and Michael Scott in this specific episode. It's because Kevin wanted to eat more broccoli. Kevin admits that the entire previous year he didn't eat any vegetables at all. So Michael has someone go get like a raw giant stalk of broccoli, and Michael force feeds it to him raw.
Oh God!
After Kevin tries to eat it the wrong way, backwards.
Yeah,
because he doesn't know what it is, so he doesn't know how to eat it.
Why are you eating stem first?
This is a new food for me. How else should I eat it?
The other way. Just eat it. Come on. Here comes the airplane. There you go. Open into the hangar. There you go.
Michael.
Yep. Eat it. Put it in your mouth and just eat it.
God, I hate it.
I don't care whether you hate it. You said you do it.
All right.
Michael. Eat it. Eat it.
You're killing him, Michael.
All right. Shh.
Okay, I ate some fluffy part. Can I be done?
Let me see if you swallowed it. Open your mouth. Under your tongue. Oh, God.
Oh.
And then it's just sitting in his mouth. He spits it out. And then the other crazy character named Creed, his resolution was to learn how to do a perfect cartwheel.
God, I love Creed.
I love, and then, okay, lastly, so Andy, and I know I'm kind of bouncing around. It's just because I get excited. This episode is so hilarious. So even if you can zero in on it, season 7, episode 13 is Andy and Dwight and why am I now blanking? It's the black dude that works in the warehouse, Daryl. They all, after the loose woman, finding a loose woman is the New Year's resolution, Daryl tells them a great place to meet women is the library. So they go to the library and they end up leaving there because they strike out quick. But then as they're driving in a car together, Dwight wants to pull into a strip club. And they decide, no, don't go into the strip club. And Daryl starts going, are you kidding? The day shift at a strip club?
No.
Come on, why not? I've never been in one before. I'm tired of being Mr. Perfect role model all the time.
I'm telling you, don't do it. I got nothing against strip clubs, but I do have something against them at noon on a Monday. The day shift at a strip club? You can't unsee that.
So they end up going across the street, and why this also sticks out, because I grew up with one of these, named this. They go roller skating at a place called Skateland. And they thought they would meet girls. And again, this is in the middle of a work day, and they go to a roller rink. Just, again, if you are a fan of the show The Office, just look this one up. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's a great episode.
They don't have to now. I thought it sounds like you gave the whole thing away.
How dare you?
Yeah. Is there anything left you want more? You want to talk about? What was?
We'll just take a break here, and we'll commercial free. Here's the episode airing, start from finish, starting now.
What was Stanley doing? You haven't covered him yet. What was he up to in this one?
Stanley didn't have a huge role.
How about Toby? Episode. Toby, was he there? The intern?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Great episode, but check it out. That was, it came to my mind. And again, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to kind of get something that represented TV. And that one is the one that came to mind first. And it was mostly because of the broccoli scene.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, side note, I met him.
That's right.
Randomly in Champs Alley. We were down there when I was working for the Timberwolves, and one night after work, we went to the Champs Alley on occasion, and he literally was sitting it was summer, so the alley was open, and he was just sitting belly up to the bar right there. You remember where the bar was set up on the side? And
yeah,
he was sitting there watching. It was during the NBA playoffs, and I literally went up and sat down next to him, and he and I chatted for like 15 minutes. And then the little group we were with, we all got a picture with him. But I sat and literally bullshitted with him for like 15 minutes while we had.
I remember you telling me this story. Do you remember why he was in town? Like, was he filming a play or doing something?
At the time, he told me that he was filming a very small role in a movie. That's what he said. And and I kind of tried to pick his brain a little bit. He didn't want to go into it farther than that. And then for the following year or two, I kept watching for any movies to come out that he was in, and I never saw anything. So I don't know if, and believe me, this was in the height of the Office run. I mean, it was not like it wasn't like in the early days of the Office.
Well, and he's pretty recognizable too.
Absolutely. So it wasn't like he was a struggling actor at that point. So I don't know. Maybe he was just saying that. Maybe he was in town visiting someone. I have no idea. But he was a big basketball fan. He was a big Lakers fan, and we sat there and watched the game for a little while. I remember him telling me that he was from Atlanta originally. And I said, well, why is it that and I kind of gave him shit. I said, why is it that all Hollywood celebrities, once they get out to LA, become fans of the LA sports teams? And He said, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
He didn't have a good
He did not. I'm like, shouldn't you keep following the Hawks? He's like, I still like the Hawks, but the Lakers are my team now. I'm like, yeah, you sellout.
How could you turn your back on Dominique Wilkins? The human highlight reel.
Absolutely. Wow.
Spud Webb.
Well, yeah. So that was my little Kevin story. Brian Baumgartner, I think was his real name, if I remember.
That sounds right.
Something like that. But a good guy, and his voice is totally different. He doesn't, in the office, he's like, yeah, I've never tried broccoli.
Well, yeah, they make him on purpose. He's supposed to be as dumb as they come.
Yeah, his voice sounds completely different than that in real life. But
and it just hit me too, not to recall it and draw more attention to it. I had mouth diarrhea a few seconds ago when I said was he in town filming a play?
Huh?
Because that makes perfect sense.
I didn't even notice that you said that. But now that you pointed it out, everyone will notice. But
Here's resolution. I will try to use better grammar on our podcasts in 2025.
Yeah. Good luck.
I'm not going to be able to hold that one up.
Good luck with all that. So, all right. Well, down to my last pick. And my last pick is also a TV show. It's also a sitcom. And it's a show that I really, really enjoyed. I watched it through its entire run. It's That 70s Show. And it's my specific reason for picking it. It is the series finale. And
you teased this a little too much. I kind of had a feeling this is where you were going when you kept pointing out the date.
Yeah, because that show, okay, so obviously it's called That 70s Show. It started out, I think, in the mid-70s sometime, or it took place in the mid-70s, obviously. This show aired on May 18th, 2006, but the finale episode took place in the show on December 31st, 1979, the exact same day that Little Bill killed his wife and then himself. December 31st, 1979.
Who knew all this was happening on that day?
Who knew? But as a show called That 70s Show, I don't know if they had this plan from the beginning. Obviously, they certainly made the plan at some point in time that it would end when the 70s ended. And that's literally what happens. The final episode takes place at a New Year's Eve party as they're saying goodbye to the 70s and welcoming in the 80s. Part of this episode is a clip show with the characters all reminiscing about the things that had happened over the 8 seasons. And they show clips from, past episodes, which, was, like I say, like a 4 or 5 year run in their world. And, they're all, basically adults now at this point in time. But and the clip shows to me are kind of like, there's that's kind of a thing that's a dying thing, by the way. I think shows don't do that anymore. Like Seinfeld had a clip show towards the end of their run, and that was kind of cool what had happened. But it's almost like a cheat. We don't have a good story to tell this week. Let's just put together a clip show.
Let's do a montage.
Yeah. So I don't know, but so part of this episode was that a lot of it looking back. But at the end of the episode, the main cast, all the the teenagers were hanging out in their little familiar circle in the basement, how they always did, in Eric Foreman's basement.
Guys, I think it's time we honor all the brain cells that survived the 70s. Despite our best efforts, some of those bastards pulled through. Tonight, they're going down.
Die, brain cells, die! And you're next, liver.
As they had done literally since the very beginning of the show, and they get called down. Somebody yells down, you guys got to come upstairs. It's almost New Year's. You got to come up for the countdown. So they all kind of get up off their chairs and they're running upstairs to go for the end of the show. And you can hear them counting down, as New Year's is coming down, 5, 4, 3. And as it gets to 1, the show abruptly ends. And it just goes to like the title scene of the thing. Kind of like,
and that's a wrap.
Then that's a wrap, because it literally had turned to the 1980s and the show ended just like that.
I knew you burnouts would be down here.
You guys, it's almost midnight. Mrs. Foreman is pouring the champagne.
Hey guys, last one upstairs. How's to call Red a dumbass?
8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's kind of neat because they always, the ending credits for that show always showed with license plate from Wisconsin, because that's where it took place. But for the last episode, it had a 1980 tag on the license plate, and then it switches to a shot of them all sitting in the Vista Cruiser singing Hello, It's Me, the song by Todd Rundgren, which is the song they were singing in the very first episode. At the very end of the first episode, the pilot, they're singing this song together in this car because they were all going off to a concert, and then that's
callback.
That's how they do a little callback at the end. And so this show, I'll be honest, there were seasons of this show that I didn't really get into. I probably actually kind of faded in and out of it the last couple of seasons. I had to come back for the finale just to see how it ended, but it just kind of all came together for that last episode.
Well, truth be told, I never got into that 70s show. I do know, if I remember correctly, we have talked about that 70s show on our podcast before, and I believe you did it.
Yeah.
Because of our episode that was our Mount Rushmore of TV dads.
We did with Red Foreman.
Dumbass!
Eric's father, played by Kurtwood Smith, I think his name is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. I did talk about him in that episode, so we talked a little bit about that 70s show too. So I think that show is hilarious. I've gone back and watched that first season. Again, I'm not going to, it's one of those shows where I wouldn't watch every season, but I'll watch like the first 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, and it's still funny to me. I mean, it's just a very funny show.
I'll maybe sample it and give it at least a try. I mean, I know it. Isn't it just a bunch of stoner kids hanging out in a basement, and it's just the day in the life of
pretty much
kids?
Yeah,
you know, teenagers in the 70s.
Yeah,
that's the premise?
Yeah, it very much is.
Yeah, I guess I would dig that.
A lot of it is still relatable, I think, to kids today, but a lot of it is certainly not, because there's no technology, there's no cell phones and all that crap. But
Yeah.
I mean, the things they do with hanging out with friends, going to concerts, and drinking, smoking up here and there, it'll be funny. You'll find it amusing.
Cool. But yeah, that is funny that the entire series does end on New Year's Eve.
I thought that was
going into the 80s.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea. It actually was the 200th episode of the series too. So that show had 200 episodes, and
Kind of leads you to believe that was planned.
Probably.
Like if they could get that many seasons of runway in front of them, this is how we'll wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, because it was probably 7 or 8 seasons long, and so yeah, they probably, obviously at the beginning they didn't think they'd get that far, but or hope they would, but you never know. But once they did get to that point, I'm sure that was the natural way to wrap it up.
Well, and in the spirit of wrapping things up, I believe that is 4 from each of us. That's our Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I only have one. You mentioned one of my honorable mentions, I guess, with the Godfather movie, but the only other one I had, I don't know if you have one, but the only one I had was Ghostbusters 2, because the whole culmination, the whole big culmination of that movie takes place on New Year's Eve when they're battling against Vigo, the haunted demon painting that comes to life, and and they use the Statue of Liberty to battle it, and it's a weird movie, but funny movie, takes place on New Year's Eve, so that was my only real honorable mention.
My honorable mention probably I would have to go back to Boogie Nights, because that is something I definitely was debating. Do I roll with that, or do I crowbar in The Office? And I wanted to throw in the Kevin eating broccoli.
Yeah,
in the break room.
I want to go back and watch that episode now.
Or in the conference room, I mean. But yeah, it is. I promise you'll love it. That's a great episode. But, and again, thank you for listening, people who listen. Mr. Listener, Mrs. Listener, we appreciate you. And we look forward to a new year of new topics and hopefully some new laughs along the way. New guests, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
So, follow us on social media. Follow us on whatever platform you use to listen to this nonsense. And if you coming out of the Christmas season here, if you don't have anything else, I will thank our sponsor, which again, very timely, because I'm going to thank this year's hot Christmas gift idea that I know swept through the nation like wildfire. So thank you, Palm Pilots.
What the hell?
So stupid.